Okay, we're going to review materials in general. At this time, I've got a database that I pulled over materials from Cabinet Vision, and so those materials really don't have pricing, they don't have a lot of relationships, but they're the main materials that came over from Cabinet Vision. We're going to look at a couple things you can do here. First, on your Track Manager software, the Materials and Inventory tab, you can see that there's a Materials folder, and the top choice on the menu is Materials and Inventory. So if you click on that, it will open up your Materials and Inventory. Now, nothing's loaded here. You have a choice. It says click load. This particular menu item on this button allows you to always load automatically when you go to the screen, or only load when you click the button. The reason this is here is that if you've got a long list of materials and you have no filter set, it takes longer to load the entire list. And then you have to sit and figure out which one you want, maybe set a filter, and it just takes time. So by having this load only when the button is clicked, what that means is I can come up here and I can set a filter, and then I can say load, and I get what I want. On the contrary, what you'd get if we cleared all the filters, if we say always load, you can see it takes a little while for it to load the entire list. So this is a convenience factor. Set it the way you like. I like to load it on purpose. I might want to look for something just by a phrase, and you can see just by typing in partial on the part number or the description that you'll be able to find what you want. There's a lot of ways to find what you want through category, through supplier. You can even look at location, things like that as far as your filters. Now, that's how you navigate the materials. Let's take a look at a material item. I can click on it and select it. I can use the edit button, or I can just double click on the item and it will pull up the detail record. There's a lot of information here, so I'm going to walk through it a little bit. I'm logged in as the administrator, and because of that, this part number is blue and it has an underline on it. I can actually change that part number here. It's not something that we recommend regular users do, but it is possible as the administrator you could change the part number and it will globally update the references throughout the database. We have the unit of measure, and unit of measures are set up in a unit of measure of consumption. There's a difference between the way you purchase and the way you consume. If you think about Cabinet Vision and that material coming over from Cabinet Vision, it's going to come over as unit of measure of consumption by the sheet or by the foot, or etc. So this always is set up as a unit of measure of consumption. There are other places that you can set up other units of measure, and I'll show you that. You can categorize, and this automatically came in from Cabinet Vision categorized. Up here you have a lead time that's used when we do MRP functions. If we know that we have a long lead time, we want to make sure that number's in there. You have taxable by. If you don't have the by checked, it will never end up in the purchasing manager because you don't buy it. Inventory types, there are 4 different inventory types. There's inventory and non-inventory as the major groups, but there's automatic and manual inventory. Automatic is what you would normally think of, which means we will make the transaction right now. If we need to charge something to the job, it's available, we can charge it now. Manual says we won't charge it right now. We have to allocate it and you have to manually charge it. This is going to be not used very often. Non-inventory are those items that you never have an on-shelf count. It means you just don't ever count them, so it never becomes an asset. Most of your materials will be inventory in Tractivity. If you interface with QuickBooks, we might have them non-inventory over there. The other is like freight charges or other things that are not physical material items. You can have in here a material item, even though it's called material item. It can be an other, and it could be an outside installation fee or something like that. We have, let's go put this back. We have a way to have a market cost. The market cost is only used in the estimating where we're dealing with cost of material, and we have a way of computing that. It could be the last buy, or it could be a mean average. And this is not something I'm going to cover too much right here. We have on hand, which is going to tell you what I have on hand. I don't have anything on hand right now. What's on order? The suppliers, if you click here, you can get a list of multiple suppliers. There's a preference order. The most preferred is the smallest digit. So you could have a 2, a 3, or 4 multiple suppliers. Each one could have their own unit of measure. Like if you're buying a unit of material, they might be a unit with a unit price here. Okay, so we're going to just leave this, and you can have your price and whatever you want to have in there. Now, if you put a price here, what this means is that when you choose this particular supplier, this is their price they normally charge. We will also keep track of the last buy that the vendor supplied. So if I buy this and it was $16, it'll put a $16 here next time I do a receive, and that way I'm keeping track of what my last buy was. Plus, this is normally what maybe the negotiated price is for that supplier. Down at the bottom here, you've got things like enable automatic reorder. If you want to keep a level, let's say I want to have anytime I get below 18, I want to order at least 24, I can set that up. If I don't want that ever, I just turn that off. You're going to have the quantity on hand and allocated quantity. If I had an allocated quantity, I'd have a little green button here that would be able to click and see what jobs are allocated on. The unit cost is going to be the mean average of the cost that, as you build them in. And then your sales price, that's not used very much, but it's there for certain situations where you actually might have a retail situation. This total cost is going to be the value of the asset for that inventory. You have some custom fields over here that you don't, I'm not even going to get into these too much, but you could set up things here that might be specific if you want to keep track of dates or custom fields such as colors, suppliers, grains, whatever. You could set up a picture. You could have notes. These pictures and notes can be available on the other screen for the purchasing manager. Over here under other, we can have things in a cost group. Again, this is beyond the scope of our conversation right now. That has more to do with the estimating. But over here on metric group, we can set up, let's say we wanted to set all of the board stock or something like that into a group of a metric group. We can then set all of them in the category to that group. What that means is, let's say I wanted to track, let's say this was going through the CNC machine, and I wanted to track sheets going through the CNC machine. I can track the quantity of a job at a metric group and say, oh, this particular job used 54 of metric group 1. So multiple items could be in that group. And we would be able to get a metric of cost and productivity of how many sheets in that case were being processed. So more on this as we talk about metrics on another video. There's other information down here. There's history, documents. You can have related documents. You can print labels associated with this particular part. The QB accounts is rarely used, but you could set up different cost of account, goods, income, etc. The only time we use the QuickBooks accounts is when we create an item in QuickBooks. After that, we don't care. The item exists in QuickBooks. We never access accounts. So this isn't really all that important. But that's the way every record is going to have for all of our material items here. So that's going to wrap up this video. Be sure to check out units of measure, particularly you want to know more about that in another video, as well as some of the other features that you'll see with subsequent videos.